Being 6 p.m. on Monday, September 16th, 2019, I'd like to call the City Council meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilor Mike Myers.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we are joined by Mayor Lott via technology.
Sorry, tough.
We'll make sure we tune her back in.
It's gonna be like 2 minutes. Well, you were right.
6 o'clock, yeah. Kick me off too.
Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. So tonight's agenda, we're going to be starting out with a public comment. We'll have a consent agenda approval. We'll have city update and council reports. And then we have a number of regular items, most of which will be covering appointments to the various commissions. So for public comment, if there's anyone who wants to share anything that's not on the agenda, this is your opportunity to step forward to the mic and share what you'd like to share. Yes.
So I step forward to that. Okay.
And just share your name and share what you'd like to say.
Okay.
You can both come on.
Stay there.
You
Stay close to that. Hi, my name is Jean Silva, and I'm here tonight to discuss the new Charter Commission in response to some of the comments that I've heard at previous meetings, and I thought I'd give a little my slant on and a little perspective. So I'll be brief. But just so we know that you can light that candle now. In 1776, when this country was started, the only people that could vote were white men of property. And essentially, it stayed that way for 80 years, with a few minor exceptions. So in New Jersey, they let women of property, single women, not married women, single women of property vote. In Kansas and Kentucky, years later, they let widows with children vote on school issues because they thought they had a stake in it. So right from inception, we're messing with who can vote. So 80 years later, 1856, they get rid of the property thing, all white men can vote. In 1868, they gave African Americans the right to be citizens, but not the right to vote. So you can be a citizen, still can't vote. So in 1870, they made a law that African Americans would not be barred from voting by any federal law or state law. And that was a positive thing, so we ought to light a candle. So that was a positive thing. But it didn't work that well because many states made laws to prohibit people of color from voting. Wyoming became the first government, the Wyoming Territory, in 1869, the first government at all to allow full female suffrage. And then 20 years later, when they wanted to be a state and they had to write a constitution, and full female suffrage was in that constitution, the U.S. Congress said, yeah, we want you as a state, but you got to take out that female suffrage thing. We don't want that. And they said, okay, we won't be a state. Bye. They go, wait a second, and change their mind. Light another candle. So the western states, and by reading, it's mostly because they wanted to attract women to those states, started voting to let women have suffrage, even though federally you couldn't. So while female suffrage going on, 15 states by 1919. In 1916, Montana voted a female representative to go to Congress. So that female could vote in Congress and she could vote in Montana, but if she moved to another state, she couldn't vote. It was not until 1920 that women got full suffrage, but not all women, not Native American women, not Asian women. So let's get another candle for full suffrage for some women. It's not until 1824 we can get another candle if we got it for Indian Citizenship Act. So get this, the people that were here ahead of time, they couldn't be citizens until 1924. And they got the legal right to vote, but they were very, very inhibited by a lot of state laws that they couldn't vote. And that's still going on today. So it was so bad about minority voting that in 1865, Congress passes the Voting Rights Act that removes discriminatory barriers to voting, and things got better, not perfect, but better. So we need another candle for that if we got it. And in 2013, the Roberts Supreme Court overturned key parts of that, and things went downhill again. So this voting thing, since inception, this voting thing has been a struggle, and it's changed over time. And everybody that has been able to vote has struggled to have that right to vote. But here's a tricky thing about non-immigrant voting. In post-Revolutionary War America, until the early 1900s, it was more the norm than not to allow non-citizen voting. So it was already here until that wave of immigration in the early 1900s when people were going, look at all these strange people, no, we're not going to let them vote, and bam, 1926 laws against immigrant voting. But those federal laws did not apply to local municipalities. And so today, San Francisco, Chicago, and parts of Maryland all allow non-citizen voting. So I don't understand, since inception, and all this is going on, that candle is just as bright. It hasn't dimmed at all. All these other people getting the right to vote, non-immigrant voting, that brightness has stayed the same. But the room's got brighter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Josie Compton. I just moved to Winooski in January. My husband and I are retired, and we really enjoy living here. But we've got the issues of the F-35 coming in. And we are renting one of the buildings, one of those new buildings from Redstone. And I've contacted Redstone and asked, why didn't you tell us that this issue was coming in? If you buy a house in Winooski, I believe there are all type of contracts that needs to be signed that these planes are coming, I believe. South Burlington has, so I think Winooski should be happening right now. And I'm wondering, why isn't that the issue for tenants? I'm wondering if you guys could pass a law where the tenants would know that the noise level will be pretty incredible. I'm not trying to hurt Winooski, financially, knowing that if people know that there is this terrible noise happening, they won't come in here. I just feel that if there is these company like Redstone could put some pressure on the Burlington mayor. I've asked them to do so, but they don't seem to, they don't have to. But if they would have to, it might help the issue. So, I can move. I just feel like anything that can help. I've heard the Porch that's coming through in June, I believe, and I just feel very sad about this. So I'm just asking to see if this can be passed. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. What I'd like to propose, that we have two separate votes, actually three separate votes, to vote on each of the minutes, the city council minutes of September 3rd, 2019, separately, and as well as the joint city school minutes of August 21st, 2019. I was absent on September 3rd, so it would be inappropriate to vote the approvals as a block. So do I have a motion to first approve the city council minutes of September 3rd, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mike, second by Jim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain? I abstain. Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the joint city school minutes of August 21st, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Amy, second by Mike. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. And for the final vote, we need an approval for the payroll warrant period August 25th, 2019 through September 7th, 2019, and the warrant ending September 13th, 2019, and a special warrant ending September 4th, 2019. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jim, second by Amy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. City update.
Great, thank you. I do have a number of updates tonight. I also want to remind us as a group that per our bylaws, if we have votes tonight that are not unanimous, we will need to do a roll call vote because the mayor is on the phone, just to be clear. On to city updates. As you heard from the last speaker, we have heard from media outlets that the F-35s are scheduled to arrive this week. They are reporting that they'll be here by Friday. We have not received any official word from the airport or VTAG, but we anticipate the news check their sources well. This coming Thursday at 5 o'clock is what the airport is calling a final TAC, or a Technical Advisory Commission meeting for the Noise Compatibility Program application. This is the application to bring sound mitigation money to the city and to the region. So I will be attending that. I sent the council the document that was prepared in advance of that meeting today, and I'm told it will be up on the btvsound.com website if others are interested in looking at that draft program document later this week. And everyone is welcome to attend that meeting. It's 5 o'clock at the airport. There's a tentative, once it is in kind of final draft form, there'll be another public hearing, much as there was back in June, and that is right now tentatively scheduled for October 24th at the airport. We have a bunch of public works updates. So starting with this week on tomorrow, actually, John, correct me if I say any of this incorrectly, for the Hickok water main project, we do need to excavate the intersection of Mallett's Bay Ave, Union, and West Lane. So West Lane will be closed from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. tomorrow. Local traffic will have access through through Hickok and Mallett's Bay Ave, but you may see some disruption at that intersection during the day tomorrow as they finish that final excavation work. Paving, our fall paving plan is about to kick off. We anticipate the paving contractor to start mobilizing the end of this week, and just as a reminder, they will be repaving Leclerc Street, Richard Street, and Burling Street. Similarly, the Main Street concrete joint replacement that we talked about a couple of meetings ago, that's targeted to start next week. So the next couple of weeks we'll see a fair amount of paving going on. And then I wanted to touch briefly on East Allen. East Allen Street. I mentioned this briefly at our last city updates as well. That right-of-way work to make that lane adjustment will begin next week. We have obviously Front Porch Forum. This has been a big discussion on Front Porch Forum. So I just want to reiterate again what I said last meeting, which is that the lane adjustment that you see out there now will be made permanent by the developer. This is in alignment with our master plan that was approved in 2017, some pedestrian and speeding police studies that we have done in the last couple of weeks or last year, including the weeks when the alternative has been in place, as well as aligned to the scoping study currently going on with East Allen Street by CCRPC. We have been targeting our next meeting for the update from Shannon County Regional Planning Commission on that scoping study. So we are going to continue to have that meeting, but at the beginning of that discussion, give an overview of all the work that's been done on East Allen Street over since the Transportation Master Plan was put into place. So more to come on that at the next meeting. Did I capture that pretty well, John? Good. So as the council knows, there was a fire at Courtyard Apartments last night. This is the Winooski Housing Authority building on East Spring Street. There was one unit that was disrupted. There were several folks transported to the hospital. Everyone will be fine. Because this is the second fire there in about a month, the residents are appropriately kind of concerned and have some questions. So the fire department will be hosting with WHA a community meeting for the residents of that building this week to talk about fire protocols, fire safety. We believe both of these fires were started by smoking materials in apartment units or cooking materials. So we're going to try and do some community risk reduction around how to stay safe in your living environment. On the fire front, we have a new Assistant Fire Marshal Captain, Liam Keating, who started today. He was a really exceptional candidate. Hi, Deke. Deke will be co-hosting that community risk reduction event with us. So we have a new employee, Liam Keating, starting today in the Assistant Fire Marshal, Fire Captain position at the city. He comes to us from Maine with quite a bit of fire leadership experience. He's also was a dispatcher before coming into this job, so he's held several positions in the public safety field, and we're excited to bring him on. We'll bring him to a future meeting to meet you all as well. Today was his first day, so we thought that would be a little much. You got an email from Paul earlier today, and for the public, our website will be going down for some scheduled maintenance this coming Friday, the 20th. We are trying to consolidate some vendors right now. Paul has a really crazy spider web on his whiteboard of all the different vendors that support our website, and we're trying to simplify down to 2 or 3 from 5 or 6. It does require us to take our website down for up to 72 hours. We're hoping it's much faster than that, but it's got to repopulate under the new DNS server. It likely will affect city email. It will be queued up, so it will be waiting there for us when we're done. But there may be a period of time this Friday through the weekend that we will be out of communication. Please feel free to call City Hall during the day on Friday or dispatch if you need something immediately. And thank you to Paul for figuring out that conundrum. And then to end with fun stuff, we had a great river cleanup. Thank you to Claudia and Ray and their team on Saturday, and the mayor for participating in that cleanup. It was fantastic, very windy day, but they did a lot of work, and it was a great community event. Just a friendly reminder that this Saturday, the Winooski Peace Initiative will be hosting the International Day of Peace event dinner Saturday night from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Senior Center. Thank you to St. Stephen's Church and the Winooski Peace Initiative for hosting that. The last Winooski Wednesday of the season is coming up on October 2nd from 6 to 8 in the Rotary, and that will be featuring the band Honey Twist. We hope people will put that on their calendars and come out. Quick shout out for programming at the library. We have some great new staff at the library, and joining Amanda and her team, who have introduced a new Pokemon club, a Dungeons and Dragons club, as well as our standing up what formerly was what we called homework help, that we are now calling academic and career support. So if you're looking for ways to connect with the community through the library, it's always a great option. And then looking ahead a little bit, we'll want to put on your calendars Friday, October 25th and Saturday, October 26th as official Halloween in Winooski. That will be the Festival of Pumpkins downtown. The weekend before, we will likely be carving pumpkins. So more to come on all of that, but it's a wonderful event in the city and want to make sure it was on people's radar screens. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to council reports. Jim, would you like to start us?
Sure. So I attended the Housing Commission meeting on last Monday, and at that meeting the members worked primarily on addressing feedback that was generated by council at our last meeting around the Housing Trust Fund policy. And Heather put together a great memo outlining both policy level changes and operational changes. The commission spent a bulk of its time looking at potential barriers to access in the program and how to address those based on our feedback, matching affordability requirements to loan terms, and thinking about ways to address issues of equity within the program and the application process. So there's a fair bit of discussion during that, and I think I'm excited to see what they're going to come up with and bring back to us.
Great, thank you. In the past 10 days, I served on 2 different interview committees. One for the Charter Change Commission, and the other for the Safe, Healthy, Connected People Commission, which is the new combined commission of community service and public service. We had some great interviews, and I think you'll learn about our recommendations shortly later in the meeting. Mayor Lott?
All right, so last week the Planning Commission met, continued discussions around form-based code, also heard some public comment from staff at the Partnership for Prevention about advertising of alcohol and tobacco. The commission is interested in that issue and is going to hear some more research from the partnership at an upcoming meeting on the actual agenda. Next Tuesday, I'll be recording the monthly World of Winooski episode on Channel 17. I'm going to be hosting Mike LaCroix from VTrans to present on the Diverging Diamond Interchange, the presentation we had at our last meeting, as well as Jason something from CCRPC. Jason Charest is going to present to us on the East Island Scoping Study, which Jesse mentioned. Hoping to use this episode as another way to get information out to the public about that project and to tell them how they can provide feedback, as well as to promote that we will be having the more detailed presentation at our next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Downtown Winooski has not met since we all last met, so I don't have any updates to share.
Okay.
The Municipal Infrastructure Commission met, and thank you, Jesse, for giving my review to the chambers, because that's basically what I was going to say, is what Jesse said. We do have our candidates that we're setting up interviews. We're trying to do it this week, but a few of them reached out to us. They're on vacation, so we're going to be doing some interviews the following week, and then set to approve that Public Works Commission. And I do know that at our meeting, we're going to develop our work plan, and we're sending that for our next meeting in October. And I think that was it. Basically, Jesse gave the update for what I was going to say, so she took the words out of my mouth, so to speak. That's all I have.
Thank you. So for regular items, I'd like to call up Paul Sarn, who's going to recommend a resolution to be approved, Love My City campaign.
Just gonna let that warm up for just a second.
That doesn't sound on.
So just to give you a brief overview of the campaign and what NLC does, the National League of Cities and Towns is a municipal resource advocate who developed this campaign. The campaign celebrates four what they call key pillars. So the key pillars are encouraging civic engagement, building communities for all generations, uplifting legacy cities, which is a phrase we've heard before, and ensuring housing for all. So as you've seen, we formally joined the campaign. We have been and will feature some really great content, including Winooski Wednesdays, a community art project, which I think you're going to hear about later. Some infrastructure highlights, an affordable housing project, and some other fun material. It's worth noting that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns is also joining this campaign. They are encouraging other communities to do it as well. They present it as the Love My Community campaign, so it really deals with a lot of the smaller towns that are here as well. Can you see that okay? Is that better? So yeah, they're also spearheading this campaign. I think that's a pretty good segue into our resolution here. Mayor Hal Colson.
So I would like to read the resolution. City of Winooski recognizes September 16th, 2019 as Love My City Day. Why do we love where we live? To answer this question, the National League of Cities created the Love My City campaign. The City of Winooski is excited to join this campaign. Whereas the City of Winooski recognizes the common ties between our strategic vision and the National League of Cities' 4 key pillars, including the encouragement of civic engagement, building communities for all generations, uplifting legacy cities, and ensuring housing for all. And whereas the City of Winooski invites our community members to share their stories, photos, and experiences, highlighting what they love about Winooski. And whereas the City of Winooski joins the Vermont League of Cities and Towns in encouraging all of our neighboring communities to celebrate. And whereas the City of Winooski formally thanks the National League of Cities for their continued support and partnership. Now therefore be it resolved that this 16th day of September 2019 be known as Love My City Day.
Thank you, Hal, and thank you everybody on council for taking the time to participate. Like I said, there'll be other really great content throughout September. If you feel like from your own personal social media accounts joining in, of course you can use #LoveMyCity, which is another good segue into introducing David Cleaver. He's our Winooski High School student who created this amazing video in support of the campaign, which you can see was prominently featured at the national level through their channels, which has been really great.
Which is, if you click on the National League of Cities Twitter account, they have not been sharing a whole lot of content from other communities. So I think it's a huge win to David and the community for getting content up there.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, my name is David. I live in Winooski and attend Winooski High School, and I was asked to make a video for my school, and since I am an aspiring videographer, I took the opportunity to do this, and I loved the outcome of it, and I hope to continue to make more videos.
Thanks, David. Let's watch.
Why do you love Winooski so much?
I really like Winooski because so many people, the school you can make new friends. It's calm.
Full of people who care about where they live.
Everybody is very helpful and kind.
I love that Winooski is an ever-changing town.
Beautiful flowers.
Everyone here is so open-minded and kind and caring to each other. And always felt like it's one big family to me.
You can do many things. And you can walk to a lot of spots, and the teachers at the school can teach you everything that you need to know.
I get to see so many different cultures.
It has nice history and good.
Winooski because it feels like home.
Learn many things.
There's people from all different places and backgrounds.
I like Winooski for their sense of community and diversity.
I love Winooski because it is so diverse and it's such a strong community and it feels like home.
Because everybody can live in love my city.
Dave owns and operates his own video production company, which is really amazing. So if you have the time or have a project coming up, please reach out. His website is djkssfilm.com.
There's one more thing I would like to add. So in 2013, my cousin passed away by drowning in the Winooski River. She was 12, and I really think that last year one of my peers also passed away to the river. So I wanted to make a video next summer to try to help improve safety around the river because I think it's kind of overlooked, but it needs to change. So, yeah.
So David, what inspired you to do this video?
I love making videos. I've been doing it since I was 8, and so any chance I get to make a video, I just take it because I love doing it. It makes me happy.
Well done.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave business cards right next to me.
Thank you.
And I encourage everybody to participate. You all have social media accounts. The hashtag is Love My City, hashtag Winooski, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Thank you.
You do need to.
Yes, so can I entertain a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second?
It was, I'm having a brain cramp. Motion was set by Jim and approved, a second by Amy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
So-
you, David.
So Jesse, you're gonna
I'm next.
start us off with the Charter Change
Sure.
Commission
Yep.
appointments.
So the next slew of agenda items are different commission appointments in just for all of these. This is a reminder and for the public. In the middle of July, the council approved a slate of different commission charters, documents establishing or reestablishing commissions. Staff then put out a call for people who are interested in continuing to serve on commissions or new folks interested in serving. Since then, the staff liaisons and the council liaisons for these that are before you tonight have conducted a series of interview processes, and the recommendations are presented to you as a slate of candidates for each commission. It is your discretion how you move them forward. So the first one is the Charter Commission. So again, just as a reminder, that is a commission stood up to open our charter, which is our foundational document for the city, the document that is in state statute that explains who we are, how we govern ourselves, how we run our processes. The council has specifically asked that that Charter Commission look at options to allow for all resident voting, as well as look at some administrative changes and aligning the administration of the school processes and the city processes to ensure those two documents are consistent. So before you now is the appointments to the Charter Commission. And Hal and I conducted these interviews, and I guess I would turn it back to you, Hal, to share any values we had about putting together this slate of candidates.
Yeah, what we were looking for in terms of qualities, we were looking for participants to have an open mind. So as we get into the various changes we'll be proposing, that we can maintain just an open process to consider what's best. We were also looking for community engagement. We envision that this commission will probably spend most of this coming year and be able to present back to the council its recommendations so that we can put those charter change proposals onto the November ballot of 2020. We're hoping that these members we selected will have an interest in learning, especially the issue of non-citizen voting. There's a lot to it. And we're looking for people who will support the process. And we, I think, came up with a good slate of recommendations for folks who fit those qualities.
So just as a reminder for, according to the bylaws that you adopted in July as well, for the new commissions, we have also staggered the terms with the intention of future terms will always be for 2 years from July through June. But this first round, we've done 1-year appointments and 2-year appointments, and you'll see those before you. For these appointments, we do have some members here present, if the council would like to hear from them, but just to go over the list. We're recommending for full commission members for the 1-year terms, Hussein Amori, who is he was here earlier, but I think had to go to another obligation. He is a student at the high school. And Jerry Myers, who is not here, but it was a former city manager for the city for many years. And then for the 2-year terms, Eric Covey, Liz Edsel, who are both here, and Prashant Singh, who obviously also serves on the Planning Commission. And then for alternates, we're recommending Doug Johnson, for a year term and Sam Myers for a 2-year term. So if they're here if you would like to hear from some of them.
If you would wish to come forward and share a few words, you can do it this time. Okay. Okay, sure.
Hi, I'm Liz Edsel, and I just wanted to thank the council for the opportunity to participate in the commission. And I have a background in grassroots organizing, and I'm really excited to come up with a process and collaborate with the rest of the commission to do really solid outreach and education, and hear all voices, and just really love living in Winooski. I'm relatively new here, so I'm happy that this will be an opportunity to meet more people as well. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Hey everybody.
Hey, Eric.
I'm Eric Covey. I'm incredibly excited to see the renewed effort in getting this commission up and off the ground. So I really want to thank you all for that, and hope to have the opportunity to participate. I think this is such an important issue for our community. Really loved what Jean Silva said, opening up the night tonight. Our country has a much longer history of enabling non-citizen voting than it does suppressing it. And I think in all of these discussions that you all have been having around equity, this is an important piece where we can ensure all of our residents, regardless of difference in immigration status, can come together and make decisions about the issues that impact their lives.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just an alternate. I'm excited to
You're
be
still
part
on
of
the
it.
commission.
Thank you. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the slate proposed for the Charter Commission.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Jim, second by Amy. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Is Christine
Oh,
still
yeah,
with us?
that's-
Yeah, she said
Not
I
hearing
can see her.
Did you vote, Mayor? I didn't quite hear you.
I did, maybe I didn't go off mute fast enough.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. Next, we'll have Heather Harrington.
Heather is actually on a well-deserved vacation.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to talk about this one quickly. So this, again, you did adopt a charter for this commission. This has been a very active commission in the last year. We did go back to the current membership, and they all expressed interest, but for one, in continuing on. So we are recommending that because of the work that's been done and the momentum they have going as a team, that we continue that. The one new appointee here tonight, the gentleman who is stepping off but has been a great contributor to the Housing Commission, was meant to be a representative from Winooski Housing Authority as our primary kind of partner in affordable housing in the city. We felt like that was a really important connection to maintain. He currently serves on the board of WHA as well. So we went to our expert, new executive director of WHA, Deek DeCaro, and she suggested that she might be able to serve on an ongoing basis or until a board member was interested in stepping back up. So we would recommend this slate of reappointments with the addition of Deek to that list, and Deek is here as well.
Would you like to share anything, Deke?
Maybe just an excuse to come up and get a card.
Isn't he so awesome?
I've been executive director of the Housing Authority for about 3 months, and as Jesse pointed out earlier, it's been interesting. But delighted to be part of the solution in Winooski to affordable housing, and really anxious to be at the table. From my point of view, it would be better for me, for a board member, but at this point, until we can get that stepped up, I would really love to serve, and I'd be honored to serve if you would appoint me.
Well, thank you so much. Any questions for Dee? Great. So is there a motion to approve the Housing Commission appointments.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Amy, second by Mike. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll hear from either Ray Coffey, Chief Audi, Chief Hebert, about the Safe, Healthy, Connected People Commission appointments.
I lost the brochure back there. So.
Yeah.
Do you need it pulled up?
I think I got it. Well, actually, for your terms, thank you. So Hal, as you mentioned earlier, was part of the interviews with myself and John and Rick a few weeks back. Had some really excellent conversations with some fantastic folks, and we're excited to have a slate of recommended commissioners for Safe, Healthy, Connected People. That's a good mix of carry forward from both public safety and community services, and also some new ideas and energy getting into the mix. We should mention too that we do have 6 slots of the 7 recommended here, so there is 1 alternate spot that's still available. We do have a couple folks that have expressed interest since we did our interview, so we'll be reaching out to those folks soon, but if anyone is interested, we're still open to hearing from you. So the slate that we are recommending is Mary Hussman for a 2-year term, Paul Rabideau for a 2-year term, Courtney Blasius for a 1-year term, Aaron Barnaby for a 2-year term, Kimberly Jordan for a 1-year term, and then Bruce Wilson as an alternate for a 1-year term.
Great. Would any of those proposed appointments like to share? Anything you'd like to share with us?
I see a few of you here.
You don't have to.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Hello, I'm honored for this opportunity. I'm Kim Jordan. I love the idea of exploring how our many different communities in this tiny town can be connected in different innovative, interesting, creative, and non-threatening ways. I'm a big fan of this town, so I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Do you want to say a few words, Bruce?
A few words, Bruce.
How are you, sir?
I'm well, thanks. I'm Bruce Wilson, and honored to be on the Commission Alternative. And my experience well, first of all, I've lived in Winooski in the past for 9 years, and I'm back for like 2 years, so 11 years or whatever. And I work around the state with some of the nonprofit work I do, basically working with the communities. And I worked with many, I did a lot with the communities in Winooski. I was on the board of directors for 6 years for Parks and Recs here. And I am very honored to, everybody knows, the people who knows me here in Winooski knows that, and I always have come forth to try to see ways I can help out in the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
So is there a motion to approve the slate for the Healthy Connected People Commission appointments?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mike, second by Jim. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. All right.
So next for the Finance Commission appointments.
Yep. So again, this is a commission that's actually been constituted in the past and then took a couple-year hiatus, and we are reconstituting. So the mayor and the finance director and I interviewed candidates for this position, for this commission, and are recommending for a 1-year term Mo Matt and Jean Silva, and a 2-year term Susan Eddy and Sheldon Goodwin. Again, several of them are here tonight. This is a commission where we still have a vacant member and 2 vacant alternates. If people are interested in really diving into numbers and spreadsheets and projections with us, we would welcome you onto the Finance Commission. But in the meantime, we have incredibly talented individuals offering to step up, and we're really excited about this slate.
Would any of the proposed appointments want to speak? Chair?
Shelley. Calling you out.
Hi, my name is Sheldon Goodwin, and I'm very excited to be a part of this commission. I studied municipal public policy in school and got to get to know Winooski over the year and a half that I've lived here, and I've loved living here so far, so I'm excited to apply my love for Winooski and also my knowledge and background in order to help make our city great moving forward. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon.
Do I hear a motion to approve the proposed slate for the Finance Commission appointments?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Amy, second by Mike. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So next we have Mayor Lott, who will walk us through the CCTV appointment.
Thanks, Hal. So as members of the Town Meeting Television CCTV service area, we are able to provide a representative to the Board of Trustees. I am recommending, so I interviewed a candidate along with the Executive Director of Channel 17 and want to put forth a recommendation for Kevin Lumpkin. He currently serves as Vice Chair on the Development Review Board and works as an attorney. A lot of the role is dealing with budgeting and contract negotiation, revenue services, looking for revenue streams. So I think he has a good background to provide good representation for us. I can't see the whole audience, so I don't know if he's here.
He is here.
Kevin, would you like to come up and say anything?
Sure. How's it going? I'm Kevin Lumpkin. I'm the Vice Chair of the DRB. I saw the posting for the CCTV trustee on Front Porch Forum, and one of the things I'd like to do is get on as many boards as possible as my schedule permits, because I think it's important to give back, and this is a great way to advocate for Winooski. As a member of the DRB, I often see the camera, and I'm excited to get on the other side of that and help advocate for CCTV. I understand they've got some contract negotiations, litigation, all things that are exciting to lawyers.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
So can I entertain a motion to approve Kevin Lumpkin as the CCTV appointment?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mike, second by Jim. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Okay,
Thank you all very much.
thank
A
you.
lot of appointments. Thank you.
So next we'll have up for discussion purposes Ray Coffey, who will talk about the Winooski Community Mural project.
We're actually going to have
okay.
Olivia here. So for those of you who don't know Olivia, she is our fantastic AmeriCorps service member for the year and has really been spearheading this project.
Hello, everybody. I'm Olivia, as just said, and I'm the Community Engagement and Volunteer Coordinator. And I'm here with some really wonderful folks, and we're here to present a Winooski community mural under the Main Street Bridge. So if you'd like to quickly introduce yourselves and how you're tied into this project, that would be awesome.
My name is Elizabeth Emmett, and my role here is to coordinate the artwork and to come up with a design, and also once we start hopefully making the piece of art with the youth in town, to really engage them and build relationships as we create the artwork together.
I'm Bruce Wilson. I'm Executive Director of Service Rendered. We have an arts program called Art So Wonderful, and we have we've been doing murals around primarily in Bronson, but in other places around the state since 2001. And basically the goal was to, because we have a graffiti abatement program, which is clean graffiti, and in my studies we found in 2001, if you put murals over graffiti, that they honor them, and also it beautifies the city. And so years ago, we did a mural underneath the bridge And it got all crappy and, tagged over years later. And so I guess DPW or whatever painted over it. So I think it was time to do it again. I asked, could we do it again, make it beautiful, and Elizabeth Emmett has been working with me. She also coordinated the Burlington ones as well. And Olivia, and all these wonderful people in the city of Winooski agreed that we can do it.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. So Bruce came to us a couple months ago. He came to Ray Coffee and I with this idea to put a mural under the bridge. And I don't know if you've been down there recently, but there is some graffiti. And so we are proposing this project, and Liz had this wonderful idea. She was just mentioning to be a community engagement opportunity. So she's gonna design it or sketch it up on the wall to be like a paint by numbers, so that we can encourage the community to come down and help paint. We would like to plan 3 open community days for anybody to come down and paint the wall, and then I have plans for specific targeted outreach to do smaller groups to supplement more painting, because it is a really large space. So the Winooski High School Culture and Community course is really interested in helping out. I'm hoping to partner with the Senior Center and potentially with Sister Pat's coffee group down at that happens every Friday at the OCC. If you have any other suggestions for outreach, I am open to that, and we would love to start painting soon. Bruce has secured in-kind donations from Lowe's and from Vermont Paint Company, and Liz is incredible and is donating her time volunteering with the city to be able to hopefully make this happen. So yeah, would you speak to the art that you're planning?
Sure. I designed a sketch that basically looks like a timeline, but as opposed to maybe a boring one at a museum, it's just a straight line. Instead of the straight line, you can imagine the contour of the Winooski River as it flows through different areas and through Winooski. And then along that river of timeline, sort of behind the water, would be these big images of Winooski through time. So we'd go all the way back to the prehistoric times where we've found evidence of a campsite, thousands of years ago, all the way through Abenaki time, through the big mill and production era, and then through this amazing diversity and the circle being formed and the downtown vibe, and all the way up through to today. And on the end of it, we were thinking about having a big sort of photo opportunity where you could sort of stand at the end and represent yourself in front of the mural as being the Winooski of today. And that's kind of the picture.
So for you all tonight, we actually don't need a vote on this, but it will go through our regular permitting process. But because it's on municipal infrastructure, we wanted to put it in front of you and just ensure that there were no concerns that you had, or if you had any concerns, that we were integrating them into the project planning process. But the actual approval will go through our zoning approval process.
So are there any comments or questions from council?
I do. I have I don't know, have you guys reached out to Dan Higgins? Dan Higgins is a photographer, and he has captured Winooski for 50 years, I think, anyway. He might be a good resource.
Absolutely, yeah.
He might ask some input, or he might donate some pictures for you guys to copy or whatever. I can't speak for Dan, but I know he's done stuff like this before through his photography. He's also came up with a book, and like I said, he's captured Winooski for, I don't want to age him, but I'll say several decades. How's that sound? I think he'd be a good source.
That's a really great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say, for one reason or another, that's one of my kids' favorite places to play down by the circle is under the bridge. So when I saw this plan coming forth, I was really excited. I want to just thank the effort to show a $0 commitment by the city to make what could be a really awesome piece of art up here in our city. Thank you so much for doing this work.
I'm excited to see how it comes out, because I've also walked down there, and then even coming up onto the bridge, that section of the park has been tagged with graffiti too. So I'm interested in seeing how this is going to play out, because maybe we can future little murals so people don't tag it. Yeah, another thing I had in mind, do you guys have a plan if in case it does get tagged with graffiti? are we gonna have a planned cleanup process where maybe we get another community engagement to clean it up or repaint?
Well, I can speak on that.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if you've seen all the, we created like 90% of the murals in Burlington.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we just started our art on boxes. You might see some new boxes coming, all beautiful, you know, because of graffiti on it. And my studies in 2001, like I said, if you put murals over graffiti, they usually honor them. And we always, if you notice that if you go behind handies, for instance, you see they always rotating. They always, so every 3 years, I think you said 5 years in your plan, that we rotate them. So what we want to do is maintain our murals. And we're doing a few of them in Burlington now. But so we maintain them. That's what
Okay, good.
We do that, you know.
Great.
That's important to us too, you know.
Sure.
Keep
Well,
it nice,
absolutely.
you know.
I mean, I think that's I'm looking at the sketch here, and I think that's a great idea with doing the Winooski River. I mean, it's right by the river, so.
One other thing too is that our sponsor from our painting company, Matt, have some other it's like the urethane, something you put over it, so cover it. So if somebody's buried, you can just wipe it off. You don't mess up the mirror. So I think that might be our final code for the mirrors in Winooski. And probably want to see some of the
Just keep that a secret.
We have secrets about I already have secrets about how to keep our murals nice and around town.
Any questions or comments from the public?
I think it sounds like a really cool idea, but I'm curious about the anticipated replacement of the bridge, which last I heard was in about 5 years. I don't know, just if you thought about that, I guess I assume it would be probably destroyed at that point, or I'm just curious.
Our murals, we usually rotate between 2 to 3 years, you know. And if you, like I said, if you go around Burlington, you see the 1 minute, you see one mural, you say, oh, this is so cool, it's awesome. People take selfies. The next one you see another year or two, you see, it turns to something different. So because one thing is because we want to give artists an opportunity to showcase their talent in public space. That's one of the main things we do. You know, we open up our art gallery as well in Burlington Mall. It's going to be free for artists. It's under construction now, and they can get 100% of their proceeds. And so what it is, that's what we want to do. Artists opportunity, showcase their talent in public spaces. Whereas that it's an education piece too. Whereas it's not only that they showcase their talent in public spaces, but they also can put it on their resume. They can put it on their press kit. They can put it on their scholarships for art schools. They can show, people in their family be proud of something that they did in their community. Also, it's a community service opportunity. We beautify our towns and city. And so it's a lot of things other than just cleaning graffiti with murals.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, but Robert, with the construction going on, you're concerned about it not lasting, being destroyed, or we don't have any plans for that bridge yet as it stands now, so it might not affect that under area anyway.
Last I heard it was 2024, but
Well,
who knows?
Probably be redone by then.
Be redone by then.
Get a good 5 years out of good 5 years out of the mural, and then there's an opportunity to start this process again and change the mural to reflect what the city looks like when there's a new bridge.
Great. Anyone else? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds like a great project.
All very, very much. Thank you.
Next, Mayor Lott, you're going to lead us through a conversation about the equity and inclusion recommendations.
Yeah, thanks, Al. So continuing on a discussion that we've been having as a council since last year about how to bring more equity into our city and policy processes. We heard a couple meetings ago at our joint meeting with the school board some recommendations coming out of a series of dialogues that a small group of folks participating in an equity series, including city, school, and community leaders, came out with. Today, I wanted us to follow up on that discussion and talk about what our next steps are. I'd like to found us, though, in the initial goals of this work. So we set out to, number one, build meaningful relationships among community leaders and a shared understanding on racism, power, and privilege. And number two, we wanted to identify best practices and processes that can make services, resources, and policies more inclusive and equitable. So I want us to be thinking about those two goals during this discussion. Our third goal was to prioritize action ideas and make recommendations how to leverage about $5,000 that the city had set aside for this work. And so we had heard some presentations at the last meeting. I have the list here. There were quite a few recommendations that came out of the group. The two that were presented to us were about forming a Winooski Equity Council and expanding the position of the school's cultural liaisons to support city issues as well. Thinking about how we might move forward towards our goals, considering these recommendations, a couple of questions that I want to propose to you for this discussion are how these recommendations could support and build on each other, how they align to what we already do as a city, and how we can ensure that whatever our next step is to move towards some kind of pilot, we're ensuring that participants are really seeing outcomes, that we're being thoughtful about how we are engaging folks in this work to make sure we're not setting something up that doesn't show them any impact for their efforts. We were all in attendance at that meeting. You know, Hal has been deeply involved in this process as well as Jim. I don't know if you all have anything to add or anything that you want to recap as well before we move into discussion.
I just want to clarify from my perspective. I think there might be some overlap between those two concepts, the multilingual liaisons, expanding their scope of work, and this equity council. But I see some distinct differences in terms of the ultimate purpose of an equity council. I see that as a body, a very diverse body that represents the greatest diversity in our community. In addition to race and ethnicity, you know, socioeconomics, ageism, you know, how do we have all of those different voices at that table who can become thought partners for the council, who can help us see what we don't see around our decision process of making policy. And I see the multilingual liaisons really focusing on supporting new Americans as they adjust to our culture and maybe more of a direct service kind of support. So I see some distinction between the two as well as some overlap. And probably different skill sets needed to be really functioning at the best possible level to do the work that's before them.
Yeah, I think piggybacking off that, I think the idea of using or expanding the multilingual homeschool liaisons within the school to encompass city work as well was in some ways an issue of opportunity, that there is this opportunity in a group of people who could provide an institutional support for both amplifying voices that we can't hear, but also getting requests back to groups that are traditionally not engaged. I think there are other analogous positions within the city that we've talked about that would serve our senior communities, low-income white population, differently abled folks. So I think that I think these could be models for how we kind of have an institutional point of communication from this kind of small body with limited time to populations that have limited time to engage in the civic process, but still have a voice and a desire to be heard. So I think that it really is, I do see as fairly distinct in terms of how these groups would function and where they would be coming into contact with the city process between the Equity Council and the multilingual liaisons, as you point out, Hal.
You know, and on that point, it kind of sounds to me like the Equity Council is focused on our work as policymakers, and the liaisons potentially are more of a city staff-centered role.
I think so. Other thoughts from council?
I just want to thank you both and Christine for the work that you did to research all of this and the weeks that you put into it. I like both of the ideas of the Equity Council and the cultural liaisons. I think one fear that I have about starting with the Equity Council right away and investing, all in on that is how will we find those individuals if we really do want to represent those diverse communities, given especially the language barriers that we have, and how can we do it in a way that would avoid tokenism? And so I think for me, I would love to see the cultural liaisons maybe try to establish some of that work for us. They're already a successful model. They're already engaging with some of these communities. And to Jim's point, could we have them sort of standing up some of this work, getting those conversations started, seeing if there's people in the community that would want to participate on the council, and then having other departments like community services and the senior center kind of fill in those other holes that you've both identified.
I like that idea. That's a good idea. I think the safety, what's the name of the new commission, the Health and Safety Commission?
Safe, healthy, connected people.
Yes. Is there room for them to have a subcommittee under that commission and to form an equity committee kind of thing? I think that would be a good start for a pilot to see how this would all transform anyway.
I think for the Equity Council, you're going to be looking for people with very specific skills around recognizing inequity and having the language and maybe the experience of helping break down and understand what might be missing from our process. So I see them more as thought partners and those who probably have some experience around this. So it will take, I think, a solid effort to find the right people to be on that committee. I think they're in our community, for sure. They're people that do this kind of work, that do workshops around, race, power, and privilege. So those are the kind of people we're looking for who have that kind of experience and skill set. So I don't see it as part of that new joint commission. I think they're going to have their own, I think their focus is going to be helping us process policy as it relates to safe, healthy, connected people.
In that same line of thinking, I like, Amy, the connection you made about taking some time to identify leaders, potentially with the help of the liaisons and other staff. I'm also thinking about how to move incrementally forward, to test something out in the community before we institutionalize something and say this is what's going to work. I feel like a good step into this sort of Equity Council, like policy support, might be inviting these folks. I think we could identify some people right away, even from this working group, potentially other areas of the community, but inviting them to the the budget goals discussion that we have and the strategy and priority meeting that we had back in June. Like these are the points in the year when we're having pretty big discussions about where we want to head. I feel like that's a good start to having someone else weigh in on, if we're having blind spots about equities and where we're going.
So Christine, in that example, do you envision those folks attending city council meetings and kind of jumping in before we are going to discuss something, or I'm just curious how you envision that rolling out?
When I think about our strategy and priority meeting, I think it's intentionally inviting these community members, these community leaders, sharing the resources with them and setting them up with the framing that we want you to look at this information as well and listen to our discussion and help us see what we are not seeing. Mm-hmm. I think it could work similarly for the budget goal setting meeting where we share the information out ahead of time and we're making sure that we have these people in the room. All these meetings are public and open to that sort of feedback anyway, but it's the outreach and the intention, I think, that could really get us that engagement.
And if I could add to that, I think a really interesting role for these council members, the equity council members, would be to have them have the training and support to be able to, on a rotating basis, attend our city council meeting. Mm-hmm. and give us live feedback about the blind spots that we may have come up in our deliberation, and maybe within 48 hours we get a written report about that feedback so that it can help guide us and teach us how to really have this lens of equity in the work that we do. So I think that could be a valuable feedback loop for us to grow and become more equitable about our work.
Absolutely, especially the in the moment piece.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's
That's right. Right.
I mean, I would say that, I see the logic for the incremental approach, but I also, having been a counselor now for what seems like more than 6 months, but it's actually only 6 months, and the amount of work that I've had to do every time getting ready for these meetings, and I'm committed to being at every meeting, I worry that we would actually spend a lot of our time trying to get individuals up to speed on particular issues ahead of those issues being discussed. Getting someone up to speed on our strategy session is not a small feat. Right. And without it having I guess I would say either it'd be great to do that incremental approach with an eye to, if this works, we have a planned endpoint, which is a more formal role that you could graduate into or that we're developing on the fly with these folks, or we just invest the time to set up the group effectively and have the same people participating over and over for a year or two. I think that from a council work and a staff work, you might end up doing about the same amount of work, and if you're trying to ad hoc pull people in at the right time. And I'm just thinking that most of our meetings have had an issue on it that could have a potential equity implication. Our noise exposure map discussion, our housing trust fund policy discussion, even the tree ordinance that I very much love, but I know that there are equity issues within there too. So I think that we have had many discussions as a body already where we want to have some, I think, someone looking for our blind spots. So it's not to say that I'm advocating one way over another, but I think if the goal is to have something that's institutional, that's supportable in the long term, I think having either a defined endpoint that we're working towards with people on an ad hoc basis, or just trying something out, giving it a year sunset and reevaluating in the year to see if it actually got us something different than we would have gotten just doing it ourselves. I think that might be, I think it is work, but I think it's work worth doing.
And to Christine's earlier point, it would give us measurable outcomes at the end of that year.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, the other thing that I want to be mindful of is that we test this approach and see if it works before we set it up. As I've mentioned before, as we discussed initially, there are a lot of barriers to the way that state statute is written and the way that we have to move through public policy. So I would prefer to see us take an incremental approach to see how this could be set up for success versus diving into something and putting these folks in a position where they actually can't see outcomes from the work they're doing. I think, Jim, to your point, there is a lot of background, there's a lot of information to be had, right, to really understand, strategy and policy. And if folks are coming into this without that background, without a good, a long runway, I worry about them not having an understanding of where state statute puts a limit to what can be done.
Well, can that be done in a training?
I don't know the answer to that. But I think for me, this feels similar to a discussion about testing out having our commissions all meet together on one night. So we are starting, we're testing that out before we say we're going to make this big shift. We're trying an all commission member orientation and then trying another meeting down the road to check in on the master plan to see if what we are envisioning actually plays out and is successful for the folks who are involved. And I would like to see a similar approach to this work.
So I have a clarifying question. So when you say incrementally, are you talking about bringing on 1 or 2 people at a time until we get a critical mass? I'm not clear about that.
I would like to see us, at this budget goal setting meeting, at the policy priority strategy meeting, and if there are other big points that make sense, inviting as many folks as we can. We already culled together a large list of people, of leaders from the community for the initial equity meeting that we had back in April. I think that gives us a really good starting place to see who's interested in this and start with a group of folks from there. If any of us have other contacts in mind that we want to reach out to, I think that's great as well. I would envision us trying to pull in as many community leaders as we're willing to be a part of the process.
Okay. Other thoughts? Any comments or questions from the public?
Could I bring us back to the cultural liaisons?
Sure.
We talked about piloting for that as well. I wanted to suggest perhaps this is an effort for staff, for Jesse and for the superintendent to talk about what it would mean to run a pilot with a single cultural liaison. How that might work for us. I know Jim has also had discussions with the Winooski Housing Authority that they have some staff that are sort of ready and willing to play this role already. And so maybe that's another way that we can test this out, this idea as well.
Yeah, I think that could be a very straightforward attempt if there is a home school liaison or a cultural liaison who's interested in trying this out for the first year. I think we do still need to do a little bit more work with all of the liaisons to have a conversation about what they perceive as barriers to participation in this process and what we might be inadvertently setting them up for. So I think that it would be great to have that conversation continue in parallel with the work that Jesse and Sean would do, if that sounds okay.
I think that's a great point.
So just a quick update from my end. So Sean and I and the community liaison supervisor have a meeting scheduled for next week to start talking about some of the operational things. I think just to flag a couple of things. One, those employees are union employees, so there will be some process to pilot or expand those roles, or to change them at all, quite frankly. I think if this is something that the council would like to move forward as a pilot or full implementation, I think that's got to be built into the FY21 budget process. In a long-term plan, even if we do a short-term plan some other time in FY20. So Sean and I will be, assuming I'm continuing to get some head nods around the table, Sean and I will be figuring out some options for that in the next couple of weeks. And that has much more to do with the fact that these are employees who are unionized that have salaries. I think the council has less of a budget impact. I think we'll have some budget impact, but less of a budget impact.
Okay. Yes.
Question. As a new commissioner, you've mentioned some training for commissions. Could you explain what your talking about in terms of like next steps for the rest of the commissions, and then for the work of the Equity Council, and I'll go back and watch the past discussions of the council on this topic, but would there be an opportunity to have members of these newly appointed commissions participate in whatever equity training or work is happening?
I would think so, and I think the Equity Council is a new concept that we'll be standing up, so it's got a lot of newness to it. We want to make sure people are really, really knowledgeable about all of this process and how they can be really supporting us in an advisory role, and what does that look like. So I think it's a really different and nuanced approach to doing this work, whereas the commissions have been ongoing, and I think whatever is needed to support the new commissioners, I think will come out of those commissions.
If I could just add a friendly amendment to that, one of the things that we had discussed at a past meeting, and this may have been actually the meeting you weren't here, Hal, and the mayor and I are planning on, is now that we have some new commissioners, doing a full commission orientation. And I'm not locking the date, not retrieving the date right now, but I think it's the beginning of October, and you'll get a communication tomorrow or the next day about that. That orientation will really focus on our form of government, on open meeting laws, on the conflict of interest policy, on the master plan, some of the organizational principles of policy guidance for the council. I think we will have a section there on the equity work that's gone on thus far and the values we kind of hold as a community. But I think there is certainly, I think that's a very kind of fundamental kind of nuts and bolts orientation. And then as we move forward, I think figuring out how to bring more equity conversations into that policy work will, as Hal suggested, be an ongoing conversation with this new Equity Council, or whatever that looks like over time.
And I think that there was a kind of vision that this Equity Council would also work with commissions as well. It would not just stop at the council level. So I think having that connection to commission work, because that's where policy formulation is happening as well, is going to be a key part of that.
I also want to recognize, when with the previous council, when this discussion began, it was based on a desire to see more representation in our commissions. And even tonight, reading the applications from all of the new applicants and the last several appointments that we've seen, I would like to recognize that I've seen an increase in representation in people from different backgrounds, ethnically, socioeconomically, age, gender. I feel like we are slowly making progress on that. And a lot of that is the efforts of us to do outreach, right? Like that is our role, is to try to bring in these voices as public representatives, voices who aren't just our the background that I represent. It is my job to try to bring in others as well. And that's something that I don't want us to forget either, that is also a responsibility on our part.
Thank you.
So I think maybe, I can't see anyone at the table. Maybe there's support for staff, for staff to proceed with talking about the operations piece of piloting a liaison.
Staff? Is that for Jesse?
I'm asking you as counselors if that is something that you would like staff to proceed with.
I think getting a baseline understanding of, what are we talking about? How many hours a week? What would the pay be? How much are we talking about adding to the budget? That would be helpful for me before we move forward.
I myself am interested in that.
Okay.
And capacity as well for the staff.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not.
I I'm glad you brought that up as well, Hal. I think that's another aspect of why I would like to test out this equity council in phases. I think jumping into having this additional body that is really involved at that level is going to require some capacity shifting. I think that, were we to start that immediately, that's a big lift on us as liaisons as well as staff, who are currently trying to set up a couple of other, get a couple of other commissions off the ground at the moment. So having time to look at a further iteration next year, I think would help with that.
Mayor, could you say a little bit more, this is Jim, I'll say a little bit more about what specific capacity issues you're concerned about? Is it council capacity or staff capacity? It's both, right? If this body is deeply involved in our agendas, in our meetings, in recapping with us, in understanding what we're doing, that's going to take time of both council and staff liaisons to set them up for success and keep them informed. We're talking about additional meetings. Our agendas don't come together particularly far in advance of these meetings as it is. There's been some recent efforts to try to get those out earlier. I think letting that happen first, so there's more space for another body to come and be aware of what's going to be on agenda before a Monday meeting, would be an easier approach for the folks that we would ask to do this. Okay, thank you.
For me, it feels like if we're inviting them to pivotal meetings, like specific ones that are further apart to begin with, that gives us more time to do that setup and that framing. I think when it comes to our budget priorities discussion or the strategy and priority setting meeting, there's more time, there's more lead up time put into putting that information together versus these individual meetings. Some of these agenda items come up like right before the meeting, right before the agenda is released.
I think if I can add to that or say it slightly differently, I think there's a lot of buy-in from the leadership team to ensure that there are as many voices at our decision-making table as possible. I think there is some concern, and I will maybe not speak for the whole leadership team, but just speak for myself, some concern about the our very prescribed processes through ordinance changes or budget timelines, getting things in front of the voters for town meeting day. I think it would be helpful to us to have some guidance, and I think this will come up as we institutionalize the Equity Commission a little more, about what exactly you want to go to that commission, and maybe it's not going to that commission, but the council coming to existing meetings, what impact that's going to have on timelines. So if we, for example, an ordinance change, to me, I would imagine that would be a key place where we would want an equity lens applied. And ordinance changes have very prescribed timelines associated with drafting and public hearing notice and approval timelines and what's it called when they're approved but they're waiting, that timeline.
30 days.
Yeah, notice timelines. It would be helpful, I think, for us maybe as a next step of this process to talk about what your policy values are for getting what you would want feedback on, and then letting us have some time to figure out what that means for other timelines, and coming back to you and saying, if we want to bring more voices, for example, into the budget process, we need to build that into the timeline. So what does that mean for when you're setting goals and when we're bringing you a final budget, and then when we're having budget hearings before it's voted on to go to the town meeting day, how does that operationally look on the ground? And I think that, to me, that's a place where there's capacity is going to change, processes are going to change, and how we have a shared understanding of what that means going into changes, I think will be really important. Does that make sense?
So a key next step for you to do any work to inform council would be which things are we going to ask this group to look at? Like that if we don't have that list of we want it to be ordinances or we want it to be budget, then you can't, it's a lot of work to go and say, well, if we did everything, then it's going to take us 3 years to pass the budget, and that's not going to work. But is that a discussion that we can have now? Or is this work that, Hal, you were going to be doing to kind of come up with a list of times when what the triggers for these people to come into the process? Or?
I could go back to my team to have those conversations. Yeah.
I think that would be helpful, Hal, to hear, you know, with the folks that you've been working on this, what they feel like would be valuable.
Yep.
I also feel like this is where having a pilot meeting would be useful, because we could see what actually comes out of that. Where does the focus go? You know, what changes are actually made to learn where this is most valuable.
Right, I agree.
And I guess, sorry, just to jump in back to the discussion a little more, I think there is a philosophical difference that is still to be fleshed out of, is this a council that we are sending things to, like we're sending ordinance changes to for feedback, or is this a group that's participating in your meetings and giving, as Hal said earlier in the discussion, kind of live updating the work. And those are, to me, those are two philosophically different approaches. And maybe there's clarity tonight around which you all have more interest in. If it's more kind of live updating, then I think the staff work is getting folks up to speed, getting folks oriented to our processes, what we mean when we say general fund or water fund, what we mean when we say regulations or licenses, what we mean when we say some of these things, so they can inform your conversations, versus a group we're standing up to staff and to send things to and to have a parallel set of meetings.
I think it's more of the latter. I really do.
The like live updating.
Yeah. But still having the capacity to, if any one of us or the council says, hey, let's throw this idea to this group and get their feedback. I mean, it can be a bit of both, but I see more of the latter.
And there's probably less work involved for the people that would be on the council. I think, Jim, you had said earlier that, you know, we have to prep so much for these meetings, and that whole body would have to do the same thing. Whereas if they were just at the meeting itself, they could just participate in the discussion and not have to do so much legwork. And we may get more participants that way if they don't have as much homework.
Yeah, there may be a protocol for them to really give us that kind of feedback in a kind of structured way.
Right,
So
and even maybe rotating the members.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like we're moving more towards an audit, right? Like a body who sits in and on our meetings and provides feedback to us.
Yeah, an equity audit.
Would it be reasonable as a next step to, you know, Jesse was going to look into some things. You were going to talk to your folks. I could work with Jesse to look for upcoming opportunities to try this out with, like some big topics that are on the horizon.
It sounds reasonable.
I think Angela and I are going to have visceral reactions if we call it an audit.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Good point. We'll figure that out. Anything else, Mayor, that we should be focusing on around this conversation?
I don't think so at the moment.
Okay. I think it's been a good discussion. I think there's a little more clarity.
Very helpful
purpose.
to me. Thank you.
So thank you all. And we will move on to discussion and approval of the FY21 budget schedule with Angela. It's that time of the year.
It's that time of year. Brace yourself, folks.
Get out your calendar.
Oh, I'm disconnected from the Wi-Fi.
It's been that time of year for like a month. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So this is a similar presentation to what we've done in the last couple of years for the budget. The staff is starting to do level services budgeting and pulling together any recommendations for additions to their budget. And they'll be submitting those to Jesse and I in the next couple of months. And we're going to be asking the council at their next meeting to do their goal setting, to give us guidance about what you want to see prioritized in the budget for FY21. Following that, council involvement will really be around the presentations of the budget starting at your meeting in December 2nd, and then every meeting after that through January, we'll present a different segment of the budget in detail before you propose the vote and warning at the end of January.
Okay.
So this very, as Angela says, this very closely mirrors what we have done in past years. What we have presented to you tonight is the first chart is your schedule, your proposed schedule. And then the second is we do give you all the details. Are you guys getting kicked off the?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're having trouble.
Just trying to get it from the email.
So we can read as long as.
Do you want to take a quick recess to pull things up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you can put it on because the website appears to be down, so clicking on the links in the agenda no longer works for at least for me.
Yeah,
it hasn't for me either.
So either we can get a package
But
email.
Carol did email us the PDF, so.
Is it,
Yeah, I got the PDF.
But that's all it is. You can't click on anything.
Yeah, it's just the agenda though.
It's just the agenda.
Okay, let's take a quick recess.
Yes, 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
Well, she did send another email that has all the documentation. I can send it to everyone.
Is it just the
Okay.
Okay, back on track. So in the first box is your schedule, and we are asking you as part of this schedule to add a meeting on December 9th. The goal of that is you'll get the full, December 2nd, I will give you an overview budget presentation. The staff between October and November finalizes the budget. Angela and I in November then finalize a proposed budget to you. You will get that on December 2nd, and then we walk through service delivery area by service delivery area. By adding in this extra meeting, gives you a meeting at the back end of the process in case there are changes you want to make. Otherwise, you're hearing from departments right up until the night where you have to approve the final budget to take to the voters. That's your choice. We can double up, we can switch around the process if you want. This is the process we've followed in the past. And then the last, on page 2 and 3 of this memo, you see our process for getting to that final budget proposal and then final approved budget that you guys will recommend to the voters.
Okay.
There is going to be one new section of the budget books compared to previous years. We will be including a leveraged funds report outlining funding sources that are being used in major capital projects. We will be trying to include how we've used grants in other operating or other smaller capital projects as well.
I would share that from my experience last year, the structure worked quite well. It allowed me to focus on the different areas each week ahead of the meeting, and then having that additional meeting to have been able to process each of the areas and think about the big picture and come back with questions was really helpful.
Two other things I want to highlight. We have, as compared to last year, we've actually moved up Public Works in the process to go early in December, with the point of that being the CIP is a major expenditure of dollars, and we want to bring that to you early. Additionally, our intention, John and I are working on this now, is at your November meeting, which is early in November, and then your last meeting until early December, to really do a deep dive on Main Street in November before the budget starts, to understand where we are with the engineering, possible phasing options, to try and answer some of those questions before we finalize the budget document for FY21. So that's not part of the FY21 budget process, but answers we need before we bring you a proposed budget.
And that's not listed on this?
That's not listed on here because it's
Okay.
a capital project, not necessarily a budget project.
Okay. So you want us to approve this proposed schedule? Can I entertain a motion to approve the proposed budget planning schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mike, second by Jim. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. It's super fun. You guys are gonna love the budget process. We do.
So next we have a discussion about goal updates for the Safe, Healthy, Connected People Commission.
This is a powerful group of people.
We'll have to get Ray a badge for his commission. Chief Commissioner.
So Jerry Myers dropped this off today, speaking of which is a city manager badge.
Oh, really?
Yes, I'm gonna give it back to him. Jerry, it's coming back to you.
All right.
Take it away.
I guess I'm lost the rush. So we, the three of us worked pretty hard on this update. I think collectively feel really good about Q1, kind of where we are for this this area of work. You know, I think definitely you see some yellow bars in the sort of pending resource section, but I think that's not surprising. Those are areas where I think we're trying to move things forward, but we know there are some resource constraints. So overall, feel really good about where we are. I don't know if there are any particular pieces. You know, I think probably best would be to say, are there particular pieces from council that you want to call out
or for either of the chiefs, anything in particular that they wanted to call out. But I think so far so good. I think we are all feeling pretty positively about how this came out.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments or questions from the council?
I couldn't hear that very well. I have a couple of questions overall. I can wait until the.
No, you can go for it.
Is done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
One thing I wanted to hear about is the summer staff pilot at the O'Brien Center, like how that turned out, if you're considering any actions next year based on that.
Sure. So I think it was a good experiment. I think it was good that we recognized an issue, got some resources pulled together. Very much appreciated the willingness of council to take a stab at a different strategy. I think the addition of staff in the time frame and on the short notice and for the rate of pay that we were able to offer, I think we could have done a better job had we had a heads up earlier of bringing folks on, getting them trained up, getting them sort of ready to hit the ground. I think because of where they came on midsummer, that was challenging, and I think we saw some of the outcomes were affected by that. I will say that having some extra adult presence around the building for the rest of the staff there was definitely positive. I think folks were able to sort of get back to their day-to-day in a different way, which was really good. But I think what we could have done better was structure some more intentionality to the way that those staff are working with kids. So I think overall, I would be interested to look at next summer carrying some things forward. I'm not sure that coming back and adding staff is necessarily where we need to be. I think the things that we saw work really well were the structured activities that we put together and held there, which I think at times were enhanced by those staff and at times weren't necessarily enhanced by those staff, if that makes sense. I think it's tough, bringing folks on midsummer. I think all of us in community services know relationships is 90% of the battle, and when you're coming in, hitting the ground and working for essentially 4 to 6 weeks, you don't have a ton of time to build those relationships necessarily. So I don't know.
If I can just add to that, I think one of the things that did help us think about was, I think community services staffing and programming next summer specifically is going to be significantly different with the opening of the pool. And it helped us start thinking about what are the, for lack of a better word, what are the levels of staffing we need to support the pool? Do we have a team of high school kids that's staffing the pool? Do we have a staff manager or a pool manager? Do we have lifeguards on staff or contracted out? I think it helped us start thinking about how to support different levels of staff as we think about really moving summer programming and operations to Landry and the pool and out of the OCC.
Yeah.
So I think that was very useful. That learning was very useful.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question adequately, Christine. I mean, I think we continue to see high volumes of youth, and I think that by and large, we're better able to keep a handle on the behavior with more adults in the building. But again, I think in retrospect, and if we were to do it again with some better planning and timing, we could do more there. But to Jesse's point, I think we learned quite a bit that'll help inform some of the work at the pool next year as well.
I think I'm sorry, Mayor. Go ahead.
Just to say, glad to hear that you got learning out of this. There's some good outcomes from.
Yeah.
I think from the public, once you added those people midsummer, some of the public comment came down too. Because before that, the residents, some of the public people that were using that facility were kind of up in arms, so to speak, about it. But it seemed to calm down once we added. So I think that was a win situation for you guys.
Yep.
So the only area in this report that started but not proceeding well is the exploring the implementation of a K-9 program. Can you say a little bit more about that? Like what's the challenge?
Sure. We've made quite a commitment to a new leadership team down at the police department, so that's going to involve quite a bit of overtime to allow them to go to that training.
I see.
And then on top of that, our detective with 30 plus years of experience is retiring in 23 months,
Oh, okay.
which doesn't seem, it seems like 2 years is a long time, but as we all know, that's going to be
Yeah.
here before we know it.
Yeah,
So we're also talking about identifying and starting to train the next person before
Okay.
he's gone. So
got it.
all of that, in total, and then having somebody leave to go to a K-9 school is just something that we don't think we can manage in the same year.
Got it. Thank you.
For context on that, I think most of you are aware of this, but since I've been here, so in 2.5 years, the entire leadership structure of the PD has shifted over. So no one who is other than the chief, no one who is currently in a leadership position was in a leadership position 2.5 years ago. I think, that's very unfortunate. In some ways, we've had some really significant losses in the department. And in other ways, we've got some really talented people coming in, stepping up and stepping into those positions who are really committed to professional development and what the chief is trying to do. So there's been a lot of change in the department, and I think the chief has, with his leadership team, has really mapped out a good professional development program there. And, I defer to him on resources and recommendations.
Great.
Seeing that the community risk reduction efforts are in yellow, proceeding but not as quickly as anticipated, given the recent fires, do we anticipate that kind of ramping up now and getting to green?
Yeah, so certainly we had in mind doing some planning, some pre-planning for early next year.
Okay.
But given the fires, 2 large-scale events at that one property, we will be putting that kind of front and center. We did set, we'll be going there Friday at 10:30 and meeting with Winooski Housing, staff and with the residents, and just start an initial outreach. Just try to settle things down a little bit and reassure them and start to answer some questions. I guess some valid questions of why, and it's that's where they all live, and it's a small event there affects 100+ units and becomes challenging. It's never at a convenient time. 9:30 last night, they're all still sitting out in front of the building, and the last one was 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. So it takes several days and a lot of resources on Winooski Housing Authority and from the city side of things. I would say that we are heading in a new direction with Winooski Housing Authority. They're coming to the table, not just because of the events. We had started some initial conversations, so these are excelling those conversations, but and we're trying to do that across the board, not just with Winooski Housing, but across the board.
I think I also need to note, because I think these guys are too professional to call it out, both of these items we've just talked about are not proceeding at the same level because of staffing changes. And I think it's really important to note in a small organization like ours that when you lose one staff, especially at a middle management, things really slow down. So Courtney Brown, our assistant fire marshal, also left over the summer. We've had Liam Keating, who I mentioned earlier, started today. So we have, really amazing talent coming on board. But when you just lose that one body in a, 4 FTE shop, it impacts how some of these projects can move forward.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I think that was going to kind of dovetail with my question, so maybe it's answered. But the issues with the courtyard are kind of unexpected and new. Are there other reasons that that the community risk reduction efforts were kind of being delayed aside from Courtney's leaving? Is there other factors that you can use some support with?
It's new to us, and it's resource. It's resources. It's a different mindset. It's taking some long tenured employees and changing the culture, if you will, of looking at things different, and it is resource based. It's not, what are we not going to do today to go concentrate on this, is where we're at, and that takes time to figure move those shells around, and figure out that capacity. But, you know, we do a ton of other work, you know, whether it's the new construction work, you know, inspections, and, you know, it's the same across the board. We're moving a shell to be able to go do this, and it's a good thing to go do, but we have to be careful what we're not going to do today. So.
Along those lines, more generally, looking at this set of priorities, has trying to move as many of these to green as possible been challenging? Has this been too much? Is this the right amount in terms of strategic priorities when balanced against the daily work that has to be done that doesn't appear here for the Safe and Healthy Connected people? I'm curious on what you think about that.
It's a great question.
It is a great question.
I love this format. I love the strategic planning that the council does. You know, the work that the commission had done previously, you know, helps us create a workflow, a work plan. It enables me to go talk to the part-time employees of the 20 plus, and, you know, transfer this information to them, start to pull in the same direction. So I love this format. I think, you know, there's some of these, we would love all these areas to be green, but I think we're able to inform you why they're not, and plan together and be transparent about why they're not, and that's important.
And it doesn't mean that you're not making progress, it's just slower.
Yeah, we've made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
Right. It's better to be slow to get it right than.
Exactly. So it's not a race. It's not a marathon.
As long as it doesn't go red. I know you like red.
And I would echo, I think, fresh today, we did our staff retreat, or department retreat this morning, but I want to echo, I think, the kind of user friendliness of this. It was pretty cool today. It's the first year where I felt like I could put up the vision statement, the goals in the master plan, and then the annual goals in quick succession, and have it make sense to someone who isn't sitting with that every day. And I think to have, you know, my staff of 8 people sitting in the room, and like you could see the light bulbs popping off of like, oh, okay, I get it. I see why this is here and how that ties up and up. So I think the format, to John's point, has been really good. I think it's ambitious, and I think that's healthy. You know, I think to a person around the leadership table, you have people that are trying to push. I don't think you have folks that are just looking to punch in, punch out. So I think we are going to be ambitious, and I think same across the table there. And I think that's going to mean there's some yellow, and that's okay. But I think it's ambitious but appropriate.
Great.
Yeah, I feel the same. We use the city strategic vision to incorporate into our PD strategic plan. That was a really important document, a blueprint for us to go forward, and it just keeps you honest to make sure you're doing the work that you're committed to doing. We still have to answer calls. We still have all the unexpected emergencies that come up that sometimes affect that timeline. I don't think I ever feel 100% comfortable putting green next to anything. It's not my personality. I always feel we're at yellow, and I always tell my leadership team, you know, downstairs that I'm going to keep pushing it. If we're at 102, I want to be 105%. It's just my personality. So I'm a little tough to see a green. I actually feel pretty good about that. So you're going to mostly see yellow for me. It's not a bad thing.
Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing as the public is gone. Well, thank you.
All right,
appreciate
Appreciate
it.
being asked how it feels to be in this document.
Great question.
It is a lot of work.
Thank you.
Okay. And for our final item on the agenda, we're going to hear from Jesse about the VLCT voting delegate for the town fair.
Sure. So Vermont League of Cities and Towns is the professional organization that supports the 246 municipalities across the state. They hold a town fair every year. Several of us from staff are attending. Part of that two-day long event is their annual meeting where they vote on bylaws and policy positions and things like that. As a member community, we are not required, but highly suggested that we have a voting member, and that needs to be appointed by you all. As you probably know, I'm on the board of directors for the VLCT, so I am required to go to the meeting, and I will be there and can be your voting member. But certainly if one of you is interested in attending, you are also welcome to be that voting member this year. One of the things that is slightly different this year than past annual meetings is that the league last year went to a 2-year, essentially like a 2-year goal setting process, a 2-year policy setting process to mirror the biennium calendar of the legislature. So it's a process where they vote on the policy positions of the organization that then direct the league lobbyists how to advocate at the State House. So that was voted on last year and will continue this year as it's the second year of the biennium. So if people were interested in getting more engaged in that process, next year would also be a great opportunity to go and vote on the next round of 2-year policy priorities. But I'm happy to, I will be there anyway.
Okay.
I think
Christine?
Yeah. So that was going to be my question: is that we don't have what will you be voting on this year? What will the delegate be voting on?
So I'm not sure we'll actually be voting on anything. They haven't set the meeting agenda for the day yet. There may be a reaffirmation of the policy priorities, but there will not be significant changes. There have been no working groups meeting. There are some administrative things they have to vote on. They have to vote to approve the minutes from last year's annual meeting, process-oriented things like that. And they vote on the board of directors. So they will be voting on that slate of candidates moving forward.
Thank you.
Any interest from council to be a voting delegate? Or shall we anoint our city manager again?
Jesse, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
If they're voting on the board of directors, are you seeking to stay on the board of directors?
I am. So I was actually voted onto the board last year to fill a vacant 1-year term of a select board member from Southern Vermont who actually got appointed to the legislature, so stepped out of her select board role. Thank you, Hal, for not doing that. So my 1-year term is up, and now I'm seeking to fill a traditional 3-year term on the board.
Will you be able to vote in that election?
Yes.
Okay. Were you to be delegate?
Yeah.
So hearing no response to that question.
I have some interest in it, I just don't.
Oh.
It's kind of far out with my schedule, and I'm wondering, what other responsibilities does this person have?
You have to attend town fair and go to that meeting on October 3rd in Killington, or October 2nd in Killington.
And then what are the other stipulations of this?
That's it.
That's it? And this has to be dealt with today? It's because you need to end by the 20th, it's said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a council decision to appoint a person? Or
Yes,
it is?
you have to vote to approve your voting member.
Mm-hmm.
Could Mike attend as a non-voting person?
Absolutely, you can all attend town fair, absolutely. And I mean, quite frankly, this year, because it's not a big year, I'm fine if you want to be a voting member, if the council's comfortable with not having a voting member there, if you can't attend.
No, but you being there, it's not like we get 2 votes, right?
No.
The city votes as a staffer, you'd be able to vote, or is it just?
Each community has 1 vote.
One vote, okay.
You get this like card, this very special voting card. That's like a special color, and you hold it up to vote on it, and there's only 1 card per community. But
We can attend it if we.
You can absolutely attend, and all 5 of you can attend it as long as you don't talk to each other about decision making. And we're happy to pay for you to attend. Or you can attend and vote, and if you, Mike, for whatever reason are not able to be there, we would just forego our vote for this year.
All right, so I'm interested then. I think I could go down with you and represent.
So is there a motion to appoint Mike Myers as our voting delegate for the VLCT Town Fair?
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Jim, second by Amy. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Hal.
Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you.
And that ends our meeting. Meeting is adjourned. We have to vote for it?
I need a motion.
Oh, shucks.
I'll move that.
Jim moved to.
Second.
And second by Amy. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned.